The bullet that shattered the window of the San Jose Mercantile missed Zelda Norwood's head by 3 inches, and she barely flinched as glass rained down around her shoulders like deadly snow. It was April 1878, and in her 22 years of living, she had learned that the world had a particular way of reminding her she did not matter enough to mourn if that shot had found its mark. "Get down!" Someone shouted from the street, but Zelda calmly set down the bolt of calico fabric she had been examining and brushed the glass fragments from her worn brown dress. Through the jagged hole in the window, she could see 2 men on horseback firing at each other as they galloped down the dusty main street, their horses kicking up clouds that turned golden in the afternoon sun. Other shoppers screamed and dove behind counters, but Zelda simply stepped away from the window and continued her shopping. She had come to town for thread and buttons, and she would not leave without them. The shopkeeper, Mr. Henderson, peered at her from behind a stack of canned goods where he had taken shelter. "Miss Norwood, are you quite all right?" "Perfectly fine, thank you." She moved toward the notions counter, her footsteps crunching on broken glass. "I will need 2 spools of white thread and a card of black buttons, if you please." Outside, the shooting had stopped. Zelda could hear men shouting and the thunder of hooves fading into the distance. She had learned long ago not to invest too much emotion in the chaos that surrounded her. Life happened to other people, the important ones, the ones who were chosen first for dances and conversations and love. She was simply a witness to it all, standing at the edges, waiting for whatever scraps might fall her way. Mr. Henderson emerged from his hiding place, his hands shaking as he retrieved her items. "No charge for these today, Miss Norwood, not after that scare. I insist on paying." Zelda placed exact change on the counter. She would not accept charity, not even the small kind. Charity was for people who inspired pity, and pity was just another reminder that she was not quite worth the full measure of anything, not even proper contempt. She left the mercantile and stepped into the bright California sunshine. San Jose was growing rapidly, transforming from a sleepy pueblo into a bustling town, but growth brought trouble along with prosperity. The streets were crowded with wagons and horses, and the wooden sidewalks teemed with farmers, miners, ranchers, and the occasional desperado. Zelda kept her head down and walked toward where she had tied her horse, a patient bay mare named Patience, which was fitting because patience was the only virtue Zelda had in abundance. "You there, miss?" Zelda turned to see a tall man striding toward her. He wore a deputy's badge on his vest, and his hat was pushed back to reveal sun-bronzed features and eyes the color of a stormy sea. He was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that needed cutting and a jaw that suggested stubbornness. "Yes?" Zelda asked, her voice carefully neutral. "You were in the mercantile when the shooting started. Did you see which direction the second rider went?" His voice was deep and carried a slight drawl that suggested he had come from somewhere farther south. "He rode east on Market Street," Zelda pointed. "He was on a gray horse with white stockings on the front legs. The other man, on the sorrel, went north on First Street." The deputy's eyebrows rose. "You got a good look at them, then." "I pay attention to details. It is a useful habit when one is frequently overlooked." Something flickered across the deputy's face, an expression Zelda could not quite identify. "I am Deputy Kellan Vance. I have not seen you around town before." "I live outside town. The old Norwood Ranch, about 8 miles west." She did not mention that the ranch barely deserved the name anymore, that it was just her and her aging father trying to keep a failing cattle operation alive on land that seemed determined to defeat them. "That is a fair distance to ride alone." Kellan Vance's eyes held what might have been concern, but Zelda had learned not to trust the apparent kindness of strangers. Kindness, in her experience, was often a prelude to disappointment. "I have been doing it since I was 15. I assure you I am quite capable." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Wait. I will need you to give a statement to the sheriff about what you saw. Those men robbed the bank over in Santa Clara yesterday, killed a clerk." Zelda felt a small flutter of something in her chest, something that might have been excitement in another woman, but in her was merely a brief interruption in the usual monotony. "Very well. Where shall I go? The sheriff's office is just down the street. I will walk with you if you do not mind." She did mind, actually, because walking beside this tall, handsome deputy would only remind every person they passed of the disparity between them. He was the sort of man people noticed, with his broad shoulders and confident stride. She was the sort of woman people forgot as soon as she left their line of sight. But she could hardly refuse, so she fell into step beside him, acutely aware of the curious glances they attracted. "You were remarkably calm back there," Kellan said as they walked. Most folks would have been terrified. Fear requires the belief that one's life has sufficient value to be worth preserving. I have found that belief to be inconsistently applied. The words came out more bitter than she had intended, and she immediately regretted her honesty. Kellan stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "That is a hell of a thing to say. It is an honest thing to say." Zelda met his gaze steadily. "Now, if you please, I would like to give my statement and return home before dark. My father will be expecting me." The sheriff's office was a sturdy adobe building that still showed its Spanish colonial origins. Inside, Sheriff Morrison, a grizzled man in his 50s with a magnificent mustache, listened to Zelda's account and wrote everything down in careful script. Kellan stood by the window, ostensibly watching the street, but Zelda could feel his attention on her. "You have a sharp eye, Miss Norwood," the sheriff said when she finished. "That description will help considerably. We have been chasing these men for 2 weeks now. I hope you catch them." Zelda stood to leave. "Deputy Vance, why do not you escort Miss Norwood back to her ranch? It is getting late and those outlaws might still be in the area." The sheriff's tone made it clear this was an order, not a suggestion. "That is not necessary," Zelda protested. "I have ridden that route alone many times. Nevertheless, I would feel better knowing you arrived home safely." Kellan was already reaching for his hat. "My horse is at the livery. I will meet you at yours in 5 minutes." Zelda wanted to argue, but she recognized the futility of it. Men like Sheriff Morrison and Deputy Vance were accustomed to having their protective instincts obeyed. She nodded curtly and left the office. Patience was waiting where Zelda had left her, and Zelda stroked the mare's soft nose while she waited for Kellan to arrive. She tried to remember the last time anyone had concerned themselves with her safety. Her father loved her, she supposed, in his distant, preoccupied way, but he had never been demonstrative. Her mother had died when Zelda was 12, and with her had gone any sense that Zelda was special or cherished. Growing up, Zelda had watched other girls be chosen for dances while she stood against the wall. She had watched young men court her schoolmates while never sparing her a second glance. She had watched her friends marry and start families while she remained at the ranch, helping her father with work that grew harder every year as drought and debt took their toll. She had learned not to hope, because hope only led to the pain of disappointment. Kellan arrived leading a handsome black gelding with a white blaze. Ready, they rode out of town together, and for the first mile neither spoke. The road west was well traveled, cutting through fields that had once been Mexican land grants and were now being divided and sold to American settlers. The afternoon was warm but not uncomfortable, and the air smelled of dry grass and dust. How long have you lived at the Norwood Ranch? Kellan asked eventually. All my life. My father bought it 20 years ago when California was still finding its feet after statehood. He had dreams of building something lasting. Zelda kept her eyes on the road ahead. Dreams have a way of withering in drought. Things have been dry these past few years, Kellan agreed. But I heard there was good rain this past winter. Perhaps your fortunes will turn. Perhaps. Zelda did not believe it. Fortune, like love and happiness, seemed to favor other people. She had learned to expect nothing and was rarely disappointed by that expectation. They rode in silence for another mile before Kellan spoke again. You said something earlier that has been bothering me. What was that? About fear requiring the belief that your life has value. You sounded like you do not believe your own life matters. Zelda considered lying, but there seemed little point. I have spent my entire life being passed over, Deputy Vance. Passed over for prettier girls, more accomplished girls, girls with better prospects or more pleasing personalities. I have been the second choice, the last resort, the one people settle for when they cannot have what they really want. After a while, one begins to internalize that message. Maybe you have just been around the wrong people. Or maybe some people are simply meant to occupy the margins while others stand in the center of the light. Zelda kept her voice matter of fact. I have made my peace with it. That is not peace. That is surrender. Kellan's voice carried a surprising intensity. And for what it is worth, I noticed you right away in town. Before the shooting, even. You were standing in the mercantile window and the sunlight was catching your hair, and I thought you were the most composed person I had ever seen. Zelda felt heat rise to her cheeks. You are kind to say so, but you do not need to flatter me. You have fulfilled your duty by escorting me home. I am not flattering you. I am telling you what I saw. Kellan guided his horse closer to hers. You stood in broken glass without flinching. You gave clear, precise information that will help us catch dangerous men. You ride alone across open country without fear. That is not the behavior of someone whose life lacks value. That is courage, or foolishness. But Zelda felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest, something warm and fragile. She pushed it down. Hope was dangerous. They came over a rise and the Norwood Ranch spread out below them. It was not much to look at anymore. The house was a simple wooden structure badly in need of paint. The barn leaned slightly to the left, and the corrals held only a handful of cattle instead of the large herd her father had once maintained. The land itself was beautiful, rolling hills that turned golden in summer and green in winter, but beauty did not pay debts. Home, Zelda said simply. A man emerged from the barn as they rode into the yard. Thomas Norwood was 60 years old and looked older, worn down by work and worry. His hair had gone completely white and his shoulders were stooped. Zelda, you are late. I was starting to worry. He stopped when he saw Kellan. Who is this? Deputy Kellan Vance, sir. I escorted your daughter home from town. There was some trouble with outlaws. Thomas's face tightened with concern. Are you all right, Zelda? I am fine, Papa. The trouble was not directed at me. I simply witnessed it. Kellan dismounted and offered his hand to Thomas. Your daughter was very helpful to our investigation, Mr. Norwood. She has a keen eye for detail. She does indeed. Thomas shook Kellan's hand and some of the tension left his face. Will you stay for supper, Deputy? It is the least we can offer after you brought Zelda home safely. I would not want to impose. Nonsense. We have plenty, and it is a long ride back to town. Thomas was already leading his horse toward the barn. Zelda, show the deputy where he can wash up. I will see to the horses. Zelda wanted to protest, but her father had already taken Patience's reins and was leading both horses away. She turned to Kellan, feeling awkward. We do not have much to offer. I am not particular. Kellan smiled at her, and it was a genuine smile, not the polite grimace people usually directed her way. Besides, I would like to know more about you. There is not much to know. I am quite ordinary. I doubt that very much. Zelda showed him to the well behind the house where they both washed the dust from their hands and faces. The evening was coming on, and the light was turning gold and soft. She found herself acutely aware of Kellan's presence. The way he moved with easy confidence, the way his eyes seemed to notice everything. Inside the house, she put together a simple meal of beans, cornbread, and the bacon her father had cured last winter. It was plain fare, nothing like the elaborate dishes she imagined wealthy families enjoyed, but Kellan ate with apparent enthusiasm. "This is excellent," he said. "You are a fine cook, Miss Norwood." "Necessity breeds competence," Zelda replied. "There is no one else to do it." Over dinner, Thomas asked Kellan about himself, and the deputy answered readily. He had come to California from Texas 2 years ago, looking for a fresh start after the war had left his family's ranch in ruins. He had worked as a cowhand first, then as a deputy in Sacramento, before taking the position in San Jose 3 months ago. "What brought you to San Jose specifically?" Thomas asked. "Opportunity. The town is growing, and Sheriff Morrison needed someone with experience. Plus, the country here is beautiful. It reminds me of home before the war ruined everything." Kellan's expression grew distant for a moment. "I wanted to build something new somewhere that still had promise." "That is what I thought when I came here," Thomas said quietly. "I hope you have better luck than I did." "Papa has had some difficult years," Zelda said, feeling the need to defend her father. "But we are managing. Barely managing, and only because you work twice as hard as any son could." Thomas looked at Kellan. "My daughter is remarkable, Deputy, though she will never admit it. She keeps this place running almost single-handedly." Zelda felt her cheeks burn. "Papa, please. It is only the truth." Thomas turned back to his meal, but not before Zelda saw the sadness in his eyes. She knew he felt guilty for the burden he had placed on her, for the life she might have had if the ranch had prospered, if there had been money for pretty dresses and social gatherings, if she had not been required to do the work of a ranch hand, instead of learning the accomplishments expected of young ladies. After dinner, Kellan helped clear the table despite Zelda's protests. "My mother raised me to be useful," he said. "She would tan my hide if she heard I sat idle while a lady worked. Your mother sounds formidable." "She was." Kellan's voice softened. "She died 5 years ago. Fever took her during the war." "I am sorry." Zelda recognized the grief in his voice. She understood loss. They stood at the dry sink together, Kelda washing and Kellan drying. It was a strangely domestic scene, intimate in its ordinariness. Through the window, Zelda could see the sun setting behind the western hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "I should head back before it gets full dark," Kellan said, but he made no move to leave. Instead, he turned to face her, his expression serious. "Miss Norwood, may I call on you again? Properly, I mean, not just as part of my duties." Zelda's heart stuttered. She wanted to say yes, but fear held her tongue. "Why would you want to do that?" "Because I find you interesting. Because I admire your strength. Because when you speak, you say things worth hearing." Kellan reached out and gently touched her hand. "Because I would like to know you better. You do not know me at all. You might be disappointed once you do. Or I might be proven right in my estimation that you are someone extraordinary." His touch was warm, sending unfamiliar sensations up her arm. "Give me a chance to find out, please." Zelda looked into his eyes and saw something there that terrified her. Sincerity, hope, interest, all the things she had stopped believing could be directed at her. "I am not good at this," she whispered. "I do not know how to be courted." "That is all right. I am not very good at courting. We can figure it out together." Kellan smiled. "What do you say? May I come back on Sunday? We could take a ride, maybe have a picnic." Every instinct Zelda had developed over years of disappointment told her to refuse, to protect herself, to not reach for something that would inevitably be pulled away. But something else, something small and stubborn, whispered that maybe, just this once, she could take a chance. "Yes," she heard herself say. "You may call on Sunday." Kellan's smile could have lit the darkening room. "I will look forward to it." Thomas walked out with Kellan to see him off, and Zelda watched from the window as the deputy mounted his horse. Just before he rode away, he turned and looked back at the house. Even in the gathering darkness, she could feel the weight of his gaze. Then he was gone, swallowed by the night. "He seems like a good man," Thomas said, coming back inside. "I suppose he does." Zelda turned away from the window. "But I have been wrong about people before. Not every man is like Warren Mitchell." Thomas's voice was gentle but firm. Zelda flinched at the name. Warren Mitchell had been a neighboring rancher's son, and 3 years ago he had paid Zelda attention for an entire summer. She had let herself believe he cared for her, had even imagined they might marry. Then, at the county fair, she had overheard him talking to his friends, explaining that he was only spending time with her to make another girl jealous. It had worked. Warren had married the other girl that fall, and Zelda had learned a valuable lesson about the danger of hope. "I know, Papa, but once burned, twice shy. Sometimes you have to risk the fire to feel its warmth." Thomas kissed her forehead. "I am going to turn in. Do not stay up too late." Zelda cleaned the kitchen and prepared for bed, but sleep was elusive. She lay in her small room, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch at night, and tried not to think about Kellan Vance. She tried not to remember the way he had looked at her, as if she mattered. She tried not to wonder what it might be like to be chosen first for once, to be someone's primary consideration rather than their last resort. But despite her best efforts, hope flickered to life in her chest like a candle flame in darkness. And that terrified her more than any outlaw's bullet ever could. Sunday arrived with excruciating slowness. Zelda tried to occupy herself with chores, but she found her attention wandering. She changed her dress 3 times before settling on her only good one, a blue calico that had faded slightly but still fit reasonably well. She brushed her hair until it shone and pinned it up in a simple style that she hoped looked presentable. "You look lovely," Thomas said when she came out of her room. "I look the same as I always do." "No, you look happy, or at least hopeful. I have not seen that expression on your face in a long time." Zelda wanted to deny it, but she could not. Against all her better judgment, she was hopeful. And when Kellan rode into the yard precisely when he had said he would, her heart did something it had no business doing. It leaped. He had cleaned up since she had seen him last, his hair neatly trimmed, his clothes obviously his best. He carried a basket that smelled deliciously of fried chicken and fresh bread. "Good afternoon, Miss Norwood, Mr. Norwood." Kellan dismounted and removed his hat. "I brought supplies for a picnic if the offer still stands." "It does." Zelda was pleased that her voice came out steady. "Let me get my bonnet." They rode north, away from the ranch, toward a spot Zelda had loved since childhood. A small creek ran through a grove of oak trees, and even in drought years it usually had some water. Today, thanks to the winter rains, it was running clear and strong, and the grass around it was still green. "This is beautiful," Kellan said as they spread a blanket beneath the largest oak. "How did you find it?" "My mother brought me here when I was small." She said every person needed a secret place where they could think. Zelda settled onto the blanket, acutely aware of Kellan's proximity. "After she died, I kept coming. It helps to have somewhere to escape to." "What was your mother like?" Zelda thought about the question as Kellan unpacked the food. She was kind, patient. She made the ranch feel like home instead of just a place we worked, and she believed in me. She told me I was special, that I would do important things. Zelda's voice caught. I think she would be disappointed to see how I turned out. I doubt that. Kellan handed her a piece of chicken. You are keeping your father's dream alive. You are surviving in difficult circumstances. That takes strength most people never have to discover in themselves. Or it just means I have no other options. You could have married someone, left the ranch. No one ever asked. Zelda said it simply as a fact. And even if they had, I could not have left Papa alone. Kellan was quiet for a moment, chewing thoughtfully. Then he said, Tell me about Warren Mitchell. Zelda's head snapped up. How do you know about Warren? Small town, people talk. Kellan's expression was sympathetic. What happened? Nothing important. He paid me attention for a summer, then married someone else. It is an old story, hardly worth repeating. It is worth repeating if it taught you to think you are not worth choosing. Zelda set down her food, her appetite gone. Why are you here, Deputy Vance? Is this some sort of charitable act? Do you feel sorry for the spinster rancher's daughter? I am here because I want to be here, because I have thought about you every day since I met you, because you fascinate me. Kellan reached across the blanket and took her hand. And I wish you would call me Kellan. Deputy Vance is what criminals and strangers call me. We barely know each other. We are strangers. Then let us remedy that. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, and Zelda felt warmth spread through her entire body. Ask me anything you want to know. Zelda hesitated, then decided honesty was the only path forward. If this was going to end in disappointment, better to know now than later. Why me? You could have your pick of women. I have seen how the girls in town look at you. Why choose someone like me? Someone like you, Kellan repeated. Do you mean someone intelligent, someone capable? Someone who does not simper or play games. He leaned closer. Zelda, most of the women I have met spend all their time trying to be what they think I want. You are just yourself, without pretense or artifice. Do you know how rare that is? I am myself because I do not know how to be anything else. It is not a virtue, it is simply a lack of imagination. Kellan laughed, and it was a warm, genuine sound. You have the sharpest wit of anyone I have ever met, and you use it to cut yourself down. Why? Because if I do it first, it hurts less when other people do it. The laughter died from Kellan's eyes, replaced by something intense and serious. I am not going to hurt you, Zelda. And I am not going to get bored or find someone better or any of the other things you are afraid of. I am here because I choose to be here. And I am going to keep choosing you for as long as you will let me. You cannot promise that. You do not know what will happen. You are right. I do not know the future, but I know what I feel right now. Kellan brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. I am choosing you, Zelda. Not as a second option or a last resort, as my first choice, my only choice. Zelda felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. You do not mean that. I do, and I am going to prove it to you however long it takes. They sat in silence for a while, hands clasped, listening to the creek burble over stones. Zelda felt as if she were standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump into unknown depths. Every self-protective instinct she had screamed at her to pull back, to guard her heart, to not believe what she was hearing. But Kellan's hand was warm in hers, and his eyes held no deception that she could see. And perhaps, just perhaps, she could allow herself to hope. Tell me about Texas, she said finally. What was it like before the war? Kellan's face softened with memory. Beautiful. My family had a ranch outside of San Antonio, not huge but successful. We raised horses, good ones. My father had an eye for bloodlines. He stared at the creek, but Zelda suspected he was seeing something else, something far away. The war destroyed it all. My brother died at Shiloh. My father died trying to hold onto the ranch afterward. The Yankees came through and burned what was left. Is that why you came to California? To escape the memories, partly. But also because I wanted to build something new. In Texas, everywhere I looked, I saw ghosts. Here, everything is possibility. He turned to look at her. At least it was until I met you. Now, when I think about the future, I see something specific. Someone specific. Zelda's breath caught. You are moving very fast. Am I? I apologize. I do not mean to frighten you. But Kellan did not release her hand. It is just that I am 26 years old and I have never felt like this before. Like I have been wandering around only half alive and suddenly someone switched on a light. That is just infatuation. It will pass. Will it? I guess we will find out. Kellan smiled. But I am willing to bet everything I have that it will not. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking. Kellan told her about his work, about the challenges of keeping peace in a growing town, about his hopes of eventually owning a ranch again. Zelda told him about the ranch, about the cattle, about her daily struggles and small victories. It was the most honest conversation she had ever had with anyone outside her father. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, they packed up the picnic and rode slowly back to the ranch. At the edge of the property, Kellan stopped his horse. May I see you again? Next Sunday? Yes. The word came easily this time. I would like that. Kellan's smile was radiant. So would I. He hesitated, then said, May I kiss your hand again? I promise I will not presume anything more. Zelda extended her hand and Kellan pressed his lips to it with a tenderness that made her chest ache. Then he was riding away and she was watching him go, her hand still tingling from his touch. Thomas was sitting on the porch when she rode up. Good afternoon. Yes. Zelda dismounted and began unsaddling Patience. Very good. I am glad. Thomas stood and stretched. I like him, Zelda. He seems genuine. He does not he? Zelda carried the saddle to the barn. That is what worries me. If it is not genuine, the disappointment will be worse. And if it is genuine, what then? Zelda had no answer to that. The following weeks established a pattern. Kellan called every Sunday, and each visit lasted longer than the one before. They rode together, talked together, gradually built a friendship that was deepening into something more. Kellan never pushed for more than Zelda was ready to give, but his affection was constant and evident in everything he did. He brought her books from town because she had mentioned loving to read. He fixed the barn door that had been sticking for months. He helped Thomas repair a section of fence, refusing any payment beyond supper. Slowly, inexorably, he was weaving himself into the fabric of their lives, and Zelda, despite her fear, was falling in love with him. It was terrifying. Every morning she woke up braced for the moment when he would realize his mistake, when he would see her clearly and understand that she was not worth this effort. But that moment did not come. Instead, Kellan seemed more certain with each passing week, more committed, more deeply attached. One Sunday in late May, he arrived with a serious expression on his face. We need to talk. Zelda's stomach dropped. Here it was, the moment she had been dreading. He was going to tell her this had been a mistake, that he had met someone else, that he could not continue this charade. All right. She kept her voice steady with effort. Let us walk. They walked away from the house toward the creek. Neither spoke until they were out of sight of the ranch buildings. Then Kellan stopped and turned to face her. I love you. Of all the things Zelda had expected to hear, that was not among them. What? I love you, Zelda. I have loved you for weeks now, maybe since the first moment I saw you standing in that broken glass like it was nothing, and I cannot keep it to myself anymore. Kellan took both her hands in his. I know you are scared. I know you have been hurt before, but I am not Warren Mitchell or anyone else who failed to see your worth. I see you, all of you, and I love every part of what I see. You cannot. Zelda's voice was barely a whisper. You do not know what you are saying. I know exactly what I am saying. I am saying that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I am saying that I want to help you run this ranch and take care of your father. I am saying that I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I am saying that you are not my second choice or my last resort. You are my first, only, and final choice. Tears were streaming down Zelda's face now, and she could not stop them. I do not know how to do this. I do not know how to believe you. Then let me show you. Kellan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Marry me, Zelda. Let me prove to you every day for the rest of our lives that I choose you, that I will always choose you. He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band set with a small diamond. It was not extravagant, but it was beautiful, and the sight of it made Zelda's heart feel like it might burst. I cannot afford much on a deputy's salary, Kellan said, but I promise you will never doubt my devotion. Say yes, Zelda, please. Zelda looked at the ring, then at Kellan's face. She saw hope there, and love, and a certainty that took her breath away. Every defensive instinct she had screamed at her to refuse, to protect herself, to not risk the inevitable pain. But there was another voice, quieter but growing stronger. Her mother's voice, reminding her that she was special, that she deserved to be loved. Her own voice, tired of living in fear, ready to take a chance on happiness. Yes, she whispered. Then, louder, yes, I will marry you. Kellan let out a whoop of joy that startled the birds from the trees. He swept her into his arms and spun her around, laughing. When he set her down, he slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. I was so afraid you would say no, he admitted. I was afraid to say yes. I still am, if I am honest. That is all right. Fear is not the opposite of love. Indifference is. Kellan cupped her face in his hands. May I kiss you now, properly? Zelda nodded, not trusting her voice. Kellan lowered his lips to hers, and the kiss was everything she had never let herself dream about. It was gentle and passionate, tentative and certain all at once. It was a promise and a beginning. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. Kellan rested his forehead against hers. I am going to make you so happy, Zelda. I promise you that. You already have. And Zelda realized it was true. For the first time in her life, she felt chosen, wanted, loved. They walked back to the ranch hand in hand, and when Thomas saw them coming, he stood up from the porch, a smile spreading across his weathered face. I take it there is news, he called out. We are getting married, Papa. Zelda held up her hand to show the ring. Thomas came down the steps and embraced them both. This is wonderful news, the best news. He shook Kellan's hand. Welcome to the family, son. Thank you, sir. I promise I will take good care of her. I know you will, and she will take good care of you. My daughter is a fierce protector of those she loves. Thomas's eyes were suspiciously bright. Have you set a date? Kellan looked at Zelda. What do you think? I would marry you tomorrow if you would have me. Zelda laughed. It felt strange and wonderful to laugh with such pure joy. Let us say 2 months. That will give me time to make a dress and you time to arrange things with the sheriff. 2 months it is. Though I warn you, it will be the longest 2 months of my life. They celebrated that night with a special supper that Zelda and Thomas prepared together. Afterward, Kellan had to return to town for his duties, but he left with obvious reluctance. I will see you next Sunday, he said at the door. Unless you need anything before then, send word if you do. I will. Zelda walked out with him to his horse. Under the cover of darkness, with only the stars as witnesses, Kellan kissed her again. I love you, he whispered against her lips. I love you too. The words felt strange in Zelda's mouth, unfamiliar after years of keeping them locked away, but they felt right, true. After Kellan left, Zelda sat on the porch with her father, watching the stars emerge one by one. The ring on her finger caught the moonlight, glinting silver. "Are you happy, daughter?" Thomas asked. "I think I am. It is a strange feeling. I am not sure I trust it yet." "Happiness takes practice, like anything else. You will get used to it." Thomas patted her hand. "Your mother would be so pleased. She always said you deserved someone who would choose you first. I wish she could be here to see this. I think she can, wherever she is." Thomas stood and stretched. "I am going to bed. Try not to stay up all night staring at that ring." But that was exactly what Zelda did. She sat on the porch until the early hours of the morning, turning the ring on her finger, trying to believe that this was real, that she was truly going to marry Kellan Vance, that someone had finally chosen her first. The next 2 months were a whirlwind of preparation. Zelda sewed her wedding dress from white muslin, working by lamplight after her daily chores were done. It was simple, nothing like the elaborate gowns she had seen in magazines, but it was hers, made with her own hands and her own hope. Kellan came by whenever his duties allowed, often staying to help with ranch work. He and Thomas began to develop a genuine friendship, talking about cattle and horses and the challenges of working the land. Zelda watched them together and felt something warm expand in her chest. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Not everything was smooth. 3 weeks before the wedding, the outlaws that had shot up the town returned, and there was a confrontation that left one of them dead and Sheriff Morrison wounded. Kellan came to the ranch that evening exhausted and shaken. "I am all right," he said when Zelda met him at the door, "but I need to see you, to remember why life is worth fighting for." They sat on the porch and Kellan told her about the shooting, how close he had come to being killed, how the reality of his dangerous job had never been more apparent. "Are you afraid?" Zelda asked, holding his hand tightly. "Terrified, not of dying but of leaving you, of not getting to have the life we are planning." Kellan's voice was rough with emotion. "Morrison is laid up for at least 6 weeks. They are bringing in a temporary deputy from Sacramento, but things are going to be dangerous until we catch the rest of that gang. Then be careful, please." Zelda touched his face. "I have only just found you. I am not ready to lose you." "You will not lose me, I promise." Kellan pulled her close. "Nothing is going to keep me from marrying you, not outlaws, not danger, nothing." But Zelda could not shake the fear that had taken root in her heart. She had finally allowed herself to hope, to love, to believe in a happy future. What if it was all snatched away? The week before the wedding, Kellan surprised her by riding out to the ranch in the middle of the day. Zelda was in the barn, mucking out stalls, when she heard his horse. "Kellan, what are you doing here? Is something wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. I have news." Kellan was grinning. "We caught them, all of them. The gang is finished." Relief flooded through Zelda so intensely that her knees went weak. "Thank God. Are you all right?" "Perfectly fine. It was actually relatively easy. They tried to rob the bank in San Francisco and the police there were waiting for them. We got word this morning." Kellan picked her up and spun her around, heedless of the dirt on her clothes. "It is over, Zelda. We are safe." "I was so worried," Zelda admitted, burying her face in his shoulder. "I kept thinking something would happen to you before we could get married." "Nothing is going to happen to me. I am going to marry you in 4 days, and then I am going to spend the rest of my life making you happy." Kellan set her down and kissed her thoroughly. "Morrison is recovering well, and he has agreed to let me have a week off after the wedding. I thought we could go to San Francisco. Have you ever been?" "No, I have never been anywhere except San Jose and Sacramento." "Then it is settled. Our wedding trip will be to San Francisco. I have been saving my pay and I want to show you the ocean. Have you ever seen it?" "No." Zelda felt overwhelmed by the generosity, by the thoughtfulness. Kellan, you do not have to do this. I want to. I want to give you everything you have never had, starting with a proper wedding trip. Kellan's expression grew serious. You have spent your whole life being passed over and overlooked. I am going to spend the rest of mine making sure you never feel that way again. Zelda felt tears sting her eyes. I do not know what I did to deserve you. You were yourself. That is all you ever had to be. The wedding took place on a bright Saturday morning in early July. The ceremony was held in the small Catholic church in San Jose, the same church where Zelda's parents had married. It was a modest affair with only a few guests, mostly neighbors and Kellan's fellow deputies, but it was perfect. Zelda wore her simple white dress and carried a bouquet of wildflowers Thomas had picked that morning. When she walked down the aisle and saw Kellan waiting for her, she barely recognized the man she had become. He wore his best suit, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. The priest spoke the ancient words, and Zelda and Kellan repeated their vows. When Kellan slipped the wedding band onto her finger, joining the engagement ring already there, Zelda felt something inside her shift and settle. This was real. This was happening. She was marrying a man who loved her, who chose her, who wanted to build a life with her. I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss your bride. Kellan did, sweetly and thoroughly, and the small congregation applauded. As they walked back down the aisle together, Zelda caught sight of her reflection in one of the church windows. She looked radiant, transformed by happiness. She barely recognized herself. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food provided by neighbors. It was not fancy, but it was filled with genuine warmth and celebration. Thomas gave a speech about how happy he was to see his daughter so well settled, and Kellan's best man, a deputy named Samuel, told embarrassing stories about Kellan's early days in California. As the sun set and the guests began to leave, Kellan pulled Zelda aside. "Are you happy, Mrs. Vance?" "Mrs. Vance," Zelda tested the name. "Yes, I think I am very happy, good, because this is only the beginning." Kellan kissed her softly. "Tomorrow we leave for San Francisco, and after that we have the rest of our lives to be happy together." That night, in the small room that had been Zelda's since childhood but would now be theirs together, Kellan held her close and whispered promises of love and devotion. And for the first time in her life, Zelda believed without reservation that she was someone's first choice. That she was loved, completely and without condition. The trip to San Francisco was a revelation. Zelda had never seen a city before, and the sheer size and bustle of it overwhelmed her senses. But Kellan guided her through it all with patient enthusiasm, showing her the wonders of the city. They stayed in a modest hotel near the waterfront, and on their first full day, Kellan took her to see the ocean. Zelda stood on the beach, feeling the cool wind off the water, watching waves roll in endlessly, and felt something expand inside her chest. "It is so big," she breathed. "I never imagined anything could be so vast." "Beautiful, is it not?" Kellan stood behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist. "I wanted you to see it, to understand that the world is so much bigger than the small corner you have been confined to. There is so much to experience, Zelda. And I want to experience it all with you." They spent the week exploring the city, eating in restaurants, visiting shops, walking along the piers where ships from around the world unloaded exotic cargo. Kellan bought her a beautiful shawl from a Chinese merchant, and a book of poetry from a shop near Union Square. Every gift was given with such obvious pleasure that Zelda could not refuse them, though her instinct was still to say they were too much. On their last night in the city, they had dinner at a fine restaurant with white tablecloths and candles. Zelda felt out of place in her simple clothes, but Kellan told her she was the most beautiful woman in the room, and the way he looked at her made her believe it. "This week has been like a dream," Zelda said over dessert. "I keep thinking I am going to wake up and find out none of it was real. It is real. I am real. We are real." Kellan reached across the table and took her hand. "And when we go back to San Jose tomorrow, it will still be real. I am going to come home to you every night. We are going to build a life together. That is not a dream, Zelda. That is our future. I am starting to believe that." Zelda squeezed his hand. "You are teaching me how to hope. You are teaching me what it means to love someone completely." Kellan's voice was soft. "I thought I knew, but I did not. Not until you." They returned to San Jose and settled into married life. Kellan moved into the ranch, and Sheriff Morrison agreed to give him more flexible hours so he could help Thomas with the work. With two able-bodied men working the land, the ranch began to recover. They were able to expand the herd, make necessary repairs, even hire a part-time hand to help with the heaviest work. Zelda found that being married to Kellan was nothing like she had imagined marriage would be. He was not demanding or dismissive. He asked for her opinions on decisions and actually listened to them. He helped with household chores without being asked. He told her every day that he loved her, and she slowly learned to believe him without question. One evening in late September, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set, Kellan said, "I have been thinking about something." "What is that?" Zelda was leaning against him, content and drowsy. "Morrison has been talking about retiring. He thinks within a year or so. The town council would probably offer me the position of sheriff." Zelda sat up. "That would be wonderful. You would be good at it." "I would. But it would mean longer hours, more responsibility. And I have been thinking that maybe that is not what I want anymore." Kellan looked out at the ranch spread before them. "What if I did not take it? What if I resigned from the deputy position and focused on helping your father run this place? We could really build something here, Zelda, make the ranch profitable again. You would give up being a lawman." "I thought you loved that work." "I do, but I love this more. I love you more. And I think I could be happy here working the land, raising cattle and horses, building a legacy for our children." Zelda's breath caught. "Children," Kellan smiled. "I hope we will have them. Several if we are blessed. I want to fill this house with life and laughter. I want to give our children everything you never had: security, certainty, the knowledge that they are loved and chosen." Zelda felt tears on her cheeks. "That sounds perfect. Then it is settled. I will talk to Morrison tomorrow, and we will start planning for the future." Kellan pulled her close. "Our future." True to his word, Kellan resigned his position as deputy the following week. Sheriff Morrison was disappointed but understanding, and he threw a farewell party for Kellan at the town saloon. Zelda attended, one of the few women present, and listened as various men praised her husband's courage and dedication. "You have got a good one there," Morrison told Zelda privately. "He is giving up a promising career for you, I know. I will make sure he never regrets it." "I do not think he will. I have never seen a man more certain of what he wants." With Kellan working full-time at the ranch, things improved rapidly. They were able to pay off the debts Thomas had accumulated during the drought years. They purchased better breeding stock for the herd. They repaired and expanded the barn. Slowly but surely, the Norwood ranch became prosperous again. In the spring of 1879, Zelda discovered she was pregnant. She told Kellan on a Sunday morning, and his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing and crying at the same time. "We are having a baby," he kept repeating. "We are having a baby. We are." Zelda was crying too, overwhelmed with joy and fear and hope. "Are you happy?" "Happy. I am beyond happy. I am ecstatic. I am terrified. I am everything." Kellan set her down gently, suddenly cautious. "Should you be standing? Should you sit down? What do you need?" Zelda laughed at his panic. I am pregnant, not fragile. I will be fine. But Kellan insisted on treating her like she was made of glass for the next several months. He took over her heavier chores, fussed over her constantly, and worried about every tiny thing. Thomas found it amusing, but Zelda found it endearing. Kellan's devotion had not dimmed with marriage. If anything, it had grown stronger. Their daughter was born in November, a healthy baby girl with dark hair and her father's eyes. They named her Clara after Zelda's mother, and she was perfect. Holding her daughter for the first time, Zelda understood for the first time what unconditional love truly meant. This tiny person was hers to protect, to nurture, to love. And she would make sure Clara never, ever felt like she was anyone's second choice. "She is beautiful," Kellan whispered, touching Clara's tiny hand with one finger, just like her mother. "She is a miracle." Zelda looked up at her husband. "Thank you. For what? For choosing me, for loving me, for giving me this life. I never thought I could be this happy." Kellan kissed her forehead. "You deserve all of this and more. You always did." The years that followed were full and rich. They had 2 more children, a son named Thomas after Zelda's father and another daughter named Rose. The ranch prospered under Kellan and Thomas's management, becoming one of the most successful operations in the area. Zelda's father lived to see all 3 of his grandchildren born, and he passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1883, content in the knowledge that his daughter was well provided for and deeply loved. It was a loss that grieved Zelda deeply, but she found comfort in Kellan's steady presence and in the family they had built together. As the years passed, Zelda sometimes thought about the young woman she had been, standing in broken glass, believing she would never matter to anyone. That woman seemed like a stranger now. Kellan had transformed her, not by changing who she was, but by loving who she was so completely that she had learned to love herself. One evening in the summer of 1890, they sat on the porch together, watching their children play in the yard. Clara was 11 now, tall and confident, already showing signs of the beauty she would become. Thomas was 8, serious and thoughtful with his mother's sharp mind. Rose was 5, all energy and laughter, keeping her older siblings on their toes. "You remember when I proposed to you?" Kellan asked, his arm around Zelda's shoulders. "Of course. You told me I was your first and only choice. You still are. Every day, in every way, I choose you." Kellan turned to look at her. "We have built a good life, have we not? The best life." Zelda leaned into him. "Better than I ever dreamed possible. It is only going to get better. Clara will be getting married eventually, giving us grandchildren. Thomas will take over the ranch. Rose will probably do something completely unexpected because she is just like you." Kellan chuckled. "We have so much to look forward to. We do." Zelda watched her children, her heart full to bursting. "I was so afraid, when we first met. I was terrified to believe you could really love me. And now I know it is the truest thing in my life. You love me and I love you, and we have built something beautiful together." Zelda turned to kiss him. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for seeing something in me I could not see in myself. That is what love does. It shows us who we truly are." Kellan pulled her closer. "And you, Zelda Vance, are extraordinary. You always have been." As the sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold, Zelda reflected on how far she had come. From a young woman who believed she would never be anyone's first choice to a beloved wife, mother, and partner. Kellan had not just chosen her. He had shown her how to choose herself, how to believe in her own worth, how to embrace the love she deserved. Their life together was not always easy. There were years of drought and years of plenty, times of sickness and times of health, moments of sorrow and moments of joy. But through it all, Kellan's devotion never wavered. He chose her every single day in 1,000 small ways and several large ones. And Zelda, who had once stood in broken glass believing her life had no value, learned that she was wrong. Her life had immeasurable value because she chose to share it with someone who saw her worth and reflected it back to her, until she could see it herself. Years later, when they were both old and gray, when their children had children of their own, when the ranch had been passed down to Thomas and his family, Zelda and Kellan would sit on that same porch and watch the sun set together. And Kellan would still tell her, every single day, that she was his first and only choice. It was a promise he kept until his last breath, but that was many years in the future. For now, in the golden summer of 1890, they sat together surrounded by the life they had built, the family they had created, the love they had nurtured. And Zelda knew with absolute certainty that she had finally found the place where she belonged. She was chosen. She was loved. She was home. The ranch continued to thrive as the years rolled forward. By the time Clara turned 16 in 1895, she had blossomed into a beautiful young woman who had inherited her mother's intelligence and her father's confidence. Young men from neighboring ranches began calling, and Zelda watched with amusement as Kellan struggled with the reality of his daughter growing up. "She is too young for courting," Kellan grumbled one evening after sending yet another suitor on his way. "She is exactly the age I was when Warren Mitchell first paid me attention," Zelda reminded him gently. "And she is far more sensible than I was. You have raised her to know her worth. She will not settle for someone who does not deserve her. No one deserves her. She is too good for all of them." Zelda laughed and kissed her husband's cheek. "You are going to have to let her go eventually. Not yet. Not for a long time yet." But time had a way of moving forward regardless of one's wishes. Clara did eventually marry, in 1899, to a kind young rancher named David, who Kellan grudgingly admitted was acceptable. The wedding was held at the ranch, and it was a far grander affair than Zelda and Kellan's had been, with neighbors from all over the county attending. As Zelda watched her daughter exchange vows, she felt Kellan's hand slip into hers. "Are you all right?" he whispered. "I am remembering our wedding, how scared I was, how certain I was that something would go wrong. And did it? Not once. Not in 21 years. Zelda squeezed his hand. "You kept every promise you ever made to me. I intend to keep them for the rest of my life." Thomas took to ranching like he had been born to it, working alongside his father and learning everything Kellan could teach him. By 1902, when he was 21, he was effectively running the ranch, allowing Kellan to slow down a bit. Kellan was 49 now, still strong and capable, but the years of hard work had taken their toll. "I am getting old," he told Zelda one night as they prepared for bed. "We both are. That is what happens when you live a long life. I do not mind getting old with you. In fact, I rather like it." Kellan pulled her close. "Every gray hair, every wrinkle, every ache and pain reminds me of all the years we have had together. You are sentimental in your old age." "I have always been sentimental where you are concerned." Kellan kissed her, and it still made Zelda's heart race the way it had when they were young. "I love you more now than I did the day we married. I did not think that was possible, but it is true. I love you too. More than words can express." Rose, true to Kellan's prediction, did something completely unexpected. In 1905, at the age of 20, she announced that she wanted to go to the new teachers' college that had opened in San Francisco. She had no interest in marriage or ranching. She wanted to teach children, to make a difference in young lives. Kellan and Zelda discussed it at length and decided to support her ambition. They paid for her schooling, and Rose excelled, graduating at the top of her class. She returned to San Jose and became a teacher at the local school, beloved by her students and respected by the community. "We raised 3 completely different children," Kellan marveled one day. "Clara, the rancher's wife, Thomas the rancher, Rose the teacher. How did that happen?" "We loved them and let them be themselves," Zelda said. "Just like you did with me." By 1910, Kellan and Zelda had 5 grandchildren, with more on the way. The ranch had grown to over 1,000 acres, employing several hands and producing some of the finest cattle in California. They had built something lasting, something that would endure long after they were gone. One spring morning, Zelda woke to find Kellan already up and dressed. "Where are you going so early?" she asked. "I want to show you something. Come with me." Intrigued, Zelda dressed and followed him outside. He led her to the old oak tree by the creek, the place where he had proposed to her more than 30 years ago. The tree was larger now, its branches spreading wide, and the creek still ran clear. "You remember this place?" Kellan asked. "How could I forget?" "This is where you asked me to marry you, where you told me I was your first and only choice. I meant it then, and I mean it now." Kellan pulled her close. "I wanted to bring you here to remind you and to remind myself of where it all began. Of the promise I made and the life we built from that promise." Zelda looked up at the man she had loved for more than 3 decades. His hair was completely silver now, his face lined with years of sun and hard work, but his eyes still held the same warmth and certainty they had held that day he proposed. "You kept your promise," she said softly. "Every single day you kept it, and I will keep it until my last breath." Kellan kissed her, sweet and tender. "You are still my first choice, Zelda, my only choice. Nothing has changed." "Everything has changed," Zelda corrected. "We were young and uncertain then. Now we are old and sure. We have a lifetime of memories, a family we created, a legacy we built together." "Everything has changed, and yet the most important thing remains the same." "What is that?" "You still choose me, and I still choose you." They stood together under the oak tree, holding each other close, grateful for every moment they had shared and every moment still to come. The creek bubbled peacefully beside them, the same creek that had witnessed their beginning and would continue long after they were gone. As they walked back to the ranch hand in hand, Zelda thought about the young woman she had been, standing in broken glass, believing she was worthless. She wished she could go back and tell that woman what waited for her, that she would be chosen, that she would be loved beyond measure, that her life would be full of purpose and joy and meaning, but perhaps it was better that she had not known. Perhaps the journey from despair to hope, from loneliness to love, from doubt to certainty, was what had made it all so precious. She had learned to value what she had because she knew what it was like to have nothing. And she had learned, thanks to Kellan, that being someone's first choice was not about being perfect or beautiful or accomplished. It was about being seen, truly seen and loved for exactly who you were. Kellan lived to the age of 73, passing peacefully in his sleep in 1924. Zelda held his hand as he took his last breath, and her final words to him were, "You kept your promise. You chose me every day." His last words to her were, "Best decision I ever made." Zelda lived another 5 years after Kellan's death, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and the legacy they had built together. She spent her final years telling stories about her husband, about the cowboy who had seen worth in a woman who believed she had none, who had loved her so completely that he had transformed her entire life. She died in 1929, at the age of 73, in the same house where she had been born. Her last thoughts were of Kellan, of the life they had shared, of the love that had sustained her through everything. She had never been anyone's first choice until she met him, and then she had been his only choice for the rest of his life. It was, she thought as she slipped away, the greatest gift anyone had ever given her. Not wealth or status or beauty, but the simple, profound gift of being chosen, of being loved, of mattering, and it had made all the difference.